Okay, so today I'm joined by Anne, who is one of the Lived Experience Advisory Panel members on equity. So thank you for joining me, Anne. It'll be nice opportunity to hear about your views and experience. So I guess to start, what role does the Lived Experience Advisory Panel play in the equity research programme?
I think the role of the panel has evolved because obviously what was just a general discussion and advice about how to deliver IAPT and mental health support by phone became very much a live issue for all of us because of COVID and because of lockdown. I think the people on the panel through lived experience, either as consumers of mental health support or people who deliver it, allows the whole project to to know how we relate to these services, and particular how things have changed with working remotely.
Yeah, it's a really important panel to have on research studies. So I guess that leads me on to, why did you decide to join Equity as a lived experience advisory member?
Well, firstly, I joined it because I did have some experience as a patient with mental health, but that had all been face to face. And I thought it would be interesting to contribute to this new development. And then at the same time, I moved into a new working role where I was actually delivering mental health support by phone because it just happened to coincide with the first lockdown. So I've come to it with sort of two experiences. And I think particularly the experience of my organisation moving from a face-to-face organisation, helping people with health and welfare, to something where we deliver most services remotely, gives me a different perspective to contribute to the work.
So you're not just coming at it from a patient or a professional, you've also got the remote experience of delivering. So that's really interesting. And what does your role as a LEAP member involve?
Attending meetings. We had hoped by now that we would actually be meeting up in person, but that doesn't seem to ever be able to work out. Studying the newsletters, the documents produced, going through some of the studies to look at how user-friendly they are, input on the development of the website. Again, trying to give that different perspective, I think, from the civilians' way of looking at things. I know that when we work in this field, we very much have a specialist vocabulary and a specialist way of speaking to each other. And this is trying to make things user-friendly.
Yeah, it's really important. It sounds like it's involvement in all different parts of the programme, really.
Yeah.
So I know your participation as a member in LEAP is obviously of much value, and the team are grateful for every LEAP member that's involved. I just wondered if you had gained anything from being part of the LEAP panel and going through this experience.
Yeah, I think it's been really interesting because I do think that there is obviously quite a thriving private sector provision for mental health support. And again, that has really grown out of all expectations because of the pandemic. But seeing how the NHS is going to use that is really interesting. And also seeing how the work can be delivered at that really much more intense level, I think, because generally the work that I'm involved in is dealing with lower level depression and anxiety. But the way the future is looking, a lot of NHS services are going to be delivered in new ways, including this kind of higher level mental health support, and not just from a way of saving money, which unfortunately always has to be something of a consideration, and also convenience for people, but also how it affects practitioners, how it affects clients in the longer term.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of implications that maybe professionals don't immediately think about.
Yeah. Yeah, so it sounds like you're inputting into the research, but also getting something out of it as well.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And finally then, thinking about future studies and how other studies can ensure lived experience panels are successfully incorporated into their work, have you got any recommendations for how that can be achieved or how it can be improved in research?
I think one thing that we've talked quite a lot about is getting a more diverse group of people involved in the feedback. I think getting people with lived experience to continue to engage with developing the services. Often I can quite understand why people, and we find this in our organisation, we phone people up 6 months after working with them to check how things are. And some people just don't want to, that they've had their help, they've moved on. And I think getting that continuous relationship would really benefit future developments. I think one of the problems is we are a self-selected group on the Equity Leap group, and we are generally fairly overwhelmingly white, middle class, many more females than male, and that isn't representative of the client group in general. And we really need some input from, for instance, ethnic minorities, people on benefits, that kind of thing, who are quite a large proportion of the group who are getting this help. I'm not sure how this is possible. We've talked quite a lot about it, and I know that throughout the country there's been very different response rates for getting patients involved, and it is one of the sort of just general problems, and I'm not quite sure how you can do it other than make it easier for people, maybe giving them more options, having a sort of easier way of giving feedback, if not by joining the kind of panel that we're on, maybe just by filling in online questionnaires, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I think it is that sort of having real input from a wider section of society would really help.
Yeah, it sounds like it's not an easy solution to it, but it's an important thing that needs to be incorporated in future research.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, that kind of feedback from service users, but also from the people who are delivering the service. I know that I've found that only working on the phone is probably more emotionally demanding than meeting people face to face, which is strange and wasn't what I would have thought. But I think it is, there's a lot you miss out on just by talking to people on the phone, or even just by talking to people on online communication. But I think there is a pressure on practitioners, especially if they're working from home, of working with quite often quite demanding and distressed people.
Mhm.
And I think maybe there has to be different ways of training, different ways of supporting practitioners in that way as well. And
Yeah.
I also think that whereas there is the convenience of interacting remotely, I think there is a therapeutic benefit in actually meeting people and in actually having to make the commitment to go to an appointment and meet somebody. And I think that a lot of our clients miss out on that aspect of treatment.
Yeah. So perhaps having in future, panels, lived experience panels, having both the practitioner, professional perspective and the patient as well.
Yeah, yeah. I think, you know, particularly at the beginning of, I'm in a lucky position in that I have a home office, so that I can actually have a physical separation between work and home. But I know that some practitioners do feel almost like it's like their work is intruding and they can't have that kind of personal space.
Yeah.
So I think to have a combination of the two, of maybe doing some appointments remotely, having some appointments face to face, and having that kind of combination, it would really help.
A bit of a hybrid approach.
Yes,
that's
exactly.
Really interesting. Thank you for going through those questions and giving us an insight into your role and what you do on the equity research study. So thank you very much.
Thank you.